Welcome along to Thruxton BSB and the Rapid Honda team. We've got one of the really cosy little pit garages here, and in a few minutes we'll be firing the Superbike off down pit lane to start FP1. The only thing that really matters this weekend is going to be tyres, because Thruxton is the fastest circuit on the calendar, but there's basically no straight. Everything is long, sweeping, arcing corners, and the surface is quite abrasive, so tyre wear here is really bad. For this weekend we have the option of our normal rear tyre, the SC0, and there's also an SC1 and a bit. It's like a slightly odd development one, it's like a one that's a bit stronger. For the sprint race we're allowed to use the zero tyre, but it's not allowed to do more than 12 laps in any session. So if you can make the zero tyre last long enough to do the sprint race, you're going to be doing pretty well. The chances are we're going to need it for qualifying because it will be worth a tiny bit of lap time, but it's going to wear out really fast, and so we need to understand in free practices which tyre, the SC0 and the SC1, will actually generate the fastest time across the whole race. And being as we have races of two different lengths, we have a 12 lapper and then two 20 lappers, there's a lot to understand. We only get one extra tyre allowance as well, and so we only get sort of really one shot to try the SC0 before quali. And so it's just thrown an extra little thing into the mix because Superbike racing wasn't at all complicated enough. But enough of tyre talk. A few minutes and Franco will be firing off down pit lane, and we'll actually see some motorbikes going round. There are 35 minutes left, so we've done 15 minutes of the session. He's just done, we're in P10 at the moment, and the tyre is definitely starting to wear, which is exactly as we expect because we're past the sort of 5 or 6 lap run. A good first stint that. Yeah, 11 laps, really good first stint. Let's see what he says.
Yeah, that was good, that really. I feel super comfortable. I've got a bit of problem with my groin at the minute. I think there's something we can change with the tag to maybe make it a bit wider so I don't have to strain my groin as much all the time. But yeah, front end felt mega. It was controlling the tyre so well, I thought. I mean, on my last lap I was only nearly 0.3 off my lap when the tyre was new, so yeah, we're feeling super comfortable at the minute.
Cool, right, we'll have a bit more of a detailed chat through that and then we'll make a bit of a plan and basically decide what to do to go back out. Rider is in at the end of 20 laps. Right, checkered flag is out on our FP1 session, so we finished 11th place, which is very good start. 20 laps, which is bang on race distance for the longer races, so that works for our strategy to test that tyre, and the fact we did it in 2 runs was pretty good. For a lot of that second run he did, he was actually riding round with Ride and Vickers and Danny Kent with the Yamahas, and they weren't really gapping him. He was hanging in with them, and the nice thing is that meant he had to use the tyre hard to stay with them, and the last couple of laps the tyre had a very big drop off, but now we understand the tyre fairly well, and so when we actually get the lap sheet in a few minutes we'll be able to tell exactly where we are. We've been in the garage 5 minutes and the boys are absolutely on it already. Wheels are out, fuel tank is off and weighed so we can do calculation of how much fuel we're using, and Spunk over here is just going through checking some of the handlebars and bits like that, just basically double check, bolt checking. The reason Chris has a new nickname is because he turned up in a set of trousers yesterday that looked like a plasterer's radio, shall we say, and so he has a new nickname for the weekend. Holly Oaks has still got the same nickname he's always had. FP2 is on track. We've changed the fork spring, just one. Got a little bit softer, and we're going out on a fresh pair of tyres, including the harder rear, and we're going to try that for 8 or 9 laps, basically to see if we can go faster on it. And then we're going to run the softer tyre and try and do 10 laps on it to understand the drop off on the soft tyre and see if it's faster. We're expecting it to be faster, but we have to try it, and if we do a 10 lap run we'll have a pretty good idea of whether it's actually going to survive a 12 lap sprint race. It's not just the end of FP2, it's the end of the afternoon, 6 o'clock, dinner is ready out the back. FP2 didn't go as well as we'd hoped. We were hoping to be in the top 12 and go straight through to Q2. And I mean, that's, you know, we have enough pace for that normally, and FP1 we did, but everybody else took a bigger step into FP2 than we did, and then when everybody took the soft tyre in to basically go for a lap time, they really jumped up. So we went half a second quicker in that session than we got in FP1, but more people went a little bit quicker than that. And so we ended the day 16th. We're 0.9 off pole, whereas we were 0.6 this morning. Yeah, and when the track temperature went up, the bike didn't feel as good. Because he was pushing a little bit harder, we were lacking a little bit of confidence to go any quicker on the front. And the track temperature going up lost us a little bit of grip, and the grip was actually more, the bike was pumping more. And then obviously it's less predictable and gripping less because the rear suspension is doing this, as opposed to just actually loading the tyre up evenly. So there's a little bit of head scratching to do, and we need to find some setup for tomorrow. But yeah, not a disastrous day, but the sort of, I don't know, a little bit of a high from FP1 has not continued through FP2. And there is yet another engine change to do on the bike, because this time the output shaft seal is leaking, which is annoying. So we'll just have a quick look at that, and then I'll go for my tea. Gearbox output shaft, and obviously there's a seal behind that, and that started weeping a little bit, so Rob noticed there was just a little bit of damp on the engine cases, so we took the sprocket cover off, and there's obviously oil coming out of the seal. We have been to see the boys at Honda. There is a spare seal, but you have to split the crankcases to get to it. So what we're going to do instead is just swap the engine, because if you're splitting the crankcase, you've got to take the engine out, and we have another one spare built up ready in the lorry. So we'll just drop another engine in, and then this one, if we really had to, we could turn it around this weekend. But it's a lot easier to do it back at the workshop. So that has generated another 3 or 4 hours work this evening. But that's the joys of going motorbike racing. These things sometimes just play you up. Right, welcome along to Saturday at Thruxton. Got the engine change and everything done last night. Did some chassis changes. Did this a few minutes ago before FP3. Now FP3's, we've said before, like a quali warm-up. It's 10 minutes, it's right before qualifying. It just gives the riders a chance to get a little bit warmed up, and it gives us just a last chance to test stuff. And of course we've made chassis changes and changed an engine, so we need a few laps. The only problem is if you find a problem, you've got 10 minutes before qualifying, so it's a little bit awkward, but that's what we've got, and we don't get any new tyres for it, and so we're just literally going to go and spin a few laps just to get his eye in. Two problems we had yesterday when we were trying to go a bit quicker. The rear was pumping quite a lot. Basically the shock sort of gets into this motion, it just keeps moving. And there's no point trying to hide it with damping, because all you're going to do is basically make the shock stop working and the wheel tyre do all the work. But what we have done is altered the spring and preload setting, so we've gone stiffer on the spring so it doesn't move as much to begin with, but with less preload on, so it doesn't sort of bounce over the crests and the bumps as much. So hopefully that'll work. And then in the forks, there was a slightly sort of loose feel, I think we'll call it, sort of on corner entry at lean angle. It felt like the steering didn't have much load to it and much weight to it. It wasn't a feeling particularly light, so we've changed the offsets in the yokes to give us a little bit more trail, and that will naturally make the front feel sort of more weighted. So with a few minutes to go before the session, there are some plans. This was all done last night, and obviously I could do it on a fancy computer program, but sometimes it's faster on pen and paper. And so what we've got up here is just basically how long the laps will take us, so we know how to schedule the session. And so the plan is when we put the new soft tyre in quali, to do a 4-lap run takes basically 5 minutes at 304 seconds. And so we know when we need to leave pit lane. And then there's just a bit of a schedule for then doing the laps on the old tyre beforehand to get basically a banker lap and a couple of laps under our belt. And FP3, we're just going to do a few laps on the old hard tyre from FP2 and get going. And then depending on how many laps we do in FP3, I know how much fuel I need to put in the bike between sessions. We work in kilograms, not litres. And that's a picture of me explaining trail. So if you want the nerdy version of trail, if you go down from the axle to the floor, that is your contact point. If you go all the way from your steering stem to the floor, that's that point, and the difference between them is the trail. So that's how much the bike will correct itself. Basically, think of the shopping trolley wheel. The wheel trails behind the pivot, like this does, and the bigger you have that space, the more stable the bike is, but the less prone to steering it is. So yeah, that is trail, basically. Right, 5 minutes. Frank will go out and ride around on that. The only fun and games is actually drizzling slightly out there because, well, it's summer in England, but it's not going to get wet enough to do anything but slicks. Right, FP3 and qualifying done, and the bike is already in bits, not because we've crashed it, but because we're doing normal maintenance. FP3, you ride around on worn out tyres and do loads of wheel spinning, basically. Quali, we knocked 3/4 of a second off from yesterday with the same tyre and just a little bit of a setup change. So after the FP3, we did actually put a bit of preload back in the shock and a bit out the forks because it didn't want to change direction and track the line quite as much as he wanted. So we made a bit of a change, but I didn't want to commit too much because a new tyre fixes a lot of problems. And it did make the bike a bit better, to the extent of he did a 1:15.4, which is a very, very fast lap. Unfortunately, in this company, it's fast enough for 17th on the grid, which is a little bit disappointing, but we're confident that his pace come the race will be better because nobody can do those really, really fast laps, because you're just going to destroy the tyre in literally 1 or 2 laps. And so come the race, it's all about being practical. You've got to go quick enough to try and get a lap time for the next race, so you've got to go reasonably quick, but you can't really go for it and risk burning the tyre out. And so it's a little bit odd, really, but that is how it is. So 17th on the grid, we're confident that we can go forward from that, but of course this is motorbike racing, so we've actually got to go and do it. So it's nearly race time, so it is a time to get wheels in the bike. So this is the joys of, you know, a fast change, proper quick release rear end in the Superbike. Rob loves working under pressure as well, so that always helps the job. So just slots the disc into the caliper, push the wheel forward, pull it back into place, slot the spindle in, get the speed brace on it, torque wrench to finish the job off, clickety-click, and the only thing left to do then is pump the back brake up and we're job sorted, ready to go. Nervous?
A little bit. Yeah, I need to be really patient. If I see a move come without burning too much tyre, I need to take it, but I don't need to overstress myself if it doesn't come too early. Yeah, no, but I think we'll have a good one today.
Right, so back on the grid, unfortunately closer to the back than the front, but that means we've got more option to go forward. And so we've got, you know, we're in decent company. Idden, Glen Irwin, Fraser Rogers is next to us, Hickman's over there, and it's like, you go, we're pretty confident that we've got better race pace than quite a few of the bikes in front of us, purely because we know our bike and our rider are quite efficient at tyre usage. Everybody's on the same tyre, you have to run the hard tyre for this. We are ready, rider's ready, we're good to go. The plan was basically smooth, consistent, and just chip away forward during the race. Unfortunately, looks like he got sat up a bit in the first corner, dropped down to 19th, and then Fraser Rogers looked like he tried to put a move on him in the chicane at the end of the lap. Hit him, Rogers went down, and Franco had to go across the grass, and is currently dead last. This is definitely not gone to plan in the slightest, but there is still 15 laps to go, so you never know what could happen. That has got to be one of the races of the year. That was spectacular. So, out a bit first, run wide onto the grass, dead last at the end of lap 1, got back to, well, we crossed the line 17th because I think Andy Irwin fell off on the last chicane, pushed Danny Kent wide, whose bike cut out and he coasted across the line. But we'd caught and passed Hedger. Who did we caught and passed? Hedger, Tomney, Vallely, got through them. Well done, mate, well done. Right, he's hurt his back, so we're going to push it down Park Fair, mate. But that was a race. If you get a chance to watch it, go back and watch it. Right, we've been going through the data, we've done a debrief. The bike pretty much is working because we know the pace is there. Other than getting pushed across the grass on the first lap, that lost us 4 seconds. Basically 3.5 seconds actually right across the grass, and then half a second in the first sector, because obviously we had no momentum coming onto the straight. And then we lost about 3 seconds of pace when we were cutting through some of the traffic. So traffic, these are BSB riders, they're not slow, but it costs us a little bit of our pace. If we come give ourselves back that 7 seconds, it would put us 10th. And Matt has been diligently working out race pace averages. Second half of the race, we were averaging a better pace than Cartwright, who won. And so we know the boy can ride it, and he's pretty good at conserving the tyre. So that's pretty good. So we know our pace is there. We just need basically a little bit of luck on the first lap, basically. And even though the pace is good and everything's working, we are making some little changes to try and warm up tomorrow. We're trying a little bit of different engine brake so that he doesn't have to rely quite as much on the front brake into a couple of places. And I've taken a little bit of torque out of a couple of gears by going into basically these map points and taking out some of the throttle opening in the through the rev range, so that when he's on the side of the tyre driving through the rev range trying to open the throttle, it should make it a bit easier for him, and it should spin the tyre a little bit less. So it's not traction control by any stretch of the imagination, but all it's doing is reducing the torque so the tyre isn't having as hard a time. So we're going to try them in morning warm-up tomorrow, and then we've got 2 more races basically to try and get ourselves back in the points towards the pointy end. Right, that's an odd day out, because that's possibly one of the best races I've actually seen you do, but it didn't quite go to plan.
I'm really proud of myself, to be honest, because I didn't get myself annoyed off what happened at the start. Didn't have the best start. Got the first lap out of the way, just wanted to sit where I was, to be honest. I was happy to stay there, but I saw that the gap in front of Fraser was growing a little bit, so I thought I'd try and get on the inside of him, because it was a move on the brakes, you're not using any tyre. So for me, that was what I wanted to do everywhere, really, was try and make my moves into the last bits or the chicane on the brakes, so you're not burning tyre to overtake. I made a move on Fraser, and then he made a silly move and came back around the outside of me and crashed into Alex. Luckily he didn't take out Alex, but then took himself out, because it was a silly move. It was never going to work, if I'm honest. And then I had to go on the grass to avoid him. Luckily I didn't run over him. Got back on the track in last by a fair bit. I don't know how many seconds I was back in last. But yeah, so as soon as I got on the back on the track, and normally I think I would have let that get to me a little bit and probably flustered myself a little bit, but I didn't. I got my head stuck down, caught back up to second off last, made some good moves, yeah, and then put the best race pace down that I could. Didn't burn my tyre out until the last couple of laps, but obviously looking at the tyres to other riders, my race pace was really good, to be fair, wasn't it? So yeah, and the grid position's not great, because like I say, I built a good race pace and not a good qualifying sort of time. So no, I think it's been a good day, really. A bad day, not a good result, but we've shown what we can do. We just need to put it in action tomorrow, really, don't we?
Yeah. And how's your back feeling?
It's all right now, to be fair. Obviously, it wasn't anything to do with Fraser, but I just pulled my back like the old man what I am.
But you're
halfway
right
through
now.
the race, yeah, I pulled it halfway through the race. So it was really sore, to be fair. I couldn't walk when I got off the bike. I've been down to seen the physios, they've loosened me up. I know I'm going to be sore in the morning, but you know, not broke anything, not hurt anything too bad. So I think we're going to have a good day.
Welcome along to Sunday morning at Thruxton. We can't start particularly early here because they have basically a quiet time for the church, and so we have grid walk early, and pit lane is very busy. So lots of people getting photos, getting autographs, meeting all the riders. Have to admit, Dow are doing slightly better than us. Yeah, so, yeah, if you come to a BSB meeting, come down pit lane, meet everybody, see all the riders. It's good crack. And yeah, it's fairly chilled out. We're under control. It's a good start to the day. Geeky stats moment. This is the rear tyre that did 20 lap race round here yesterday. So it does 20 lap race plus the warm-up lap. I mean, the warm-up lap is the slowest warm-up lap ever going because nobody wants to use the end of the tyre. But this place is so bad on tyre wear that this is a harder compound tyre than normal, and it's labelled an SC1, but it's actually an SC1 and a bit. It's like a special construction for here. Right, these are the wear markers. So the equivalent of the tread on your tyres, these tell us how worn the tyre is. So you can see in the middle, they're not too bad. There is supposed to be some more over here. In fact, that's one on that side, and that's one. So on the left-hand side of the tyre, they're not too bad. On the right-hand side of the tyre, there are no wear markers. They've gone completely. But if we look at it at an angle, you can actually see this side, the shape's almost how it's supposed to be, but on this side, it gets to the middle and basically like dishes in and then goes flat. And the issue with this is, of course, we're losing the grip because the tyre is wearing out and the rubber's basically getting worse and worse. But also you lose the shape. And so the contact patch shape changes, and also the way the bike actually rolls onto the side of the tyre changes. And so a new tyre will fix many, many handling problems, but this does go some way to explaining why the lap times at the end of the race are never going to be as good, because it's not just the actual amount of rubber on the tyre that's gone, it's actually the shape of the tyre, so the bike doesn't even steer properly. And final stat on the rear tyre. This rear tyre, after 20 laps, is 1,060 grams, just over a kilogram, lighter than when it started the race. So we've lost the equivalent of a bag of sugar just off the rear tyre. It is hot today, 26 degrees ambient at the moment, but like 36, nearly 37 degrees track temperature. We have a fan on the bike, and it's not absolutely critical at the moment, but if we can get temperature out of the bike now, it takes longer to build during the race. And so it's always good to basically try and chill out. Jim from the gym, he's holding a fan for Franco to keep him cool, and we've got a pack of ice on his back as well, because in leathers this will be toasty. If you're in the Grantham area and you want to go to an awesome gym and train like a BSB star, AUK Gym in Grantham. That's Jim's plug. Right, we're 17th on the grid. We've got Andy Owen next to us, and then we've got Kyle Vickers, who won, who was on the podium yesterday in front of us, and then Tommy Bridewell in 14th. And it's a bit of an odd grid because it's all about tyre wear. Basically, if you go for one incredibly fast lap, you'll burn a load of tyre out and not finish the race very well. So Glenn Irwin, who might have burnt a bit too much tyre out, he's on second on the grid, but he was 14th yesterday in the race. And the guys who are winning are back on row 5 and 6 with us. So a bit upside down and topsy-turvy, but it means if we can just get in that group to begin with, come the end of the race, hopefully, we'll still win and we'll be fighting for some good points. Right, exciting start to that. Unfortunately, Glenn Irwin had quite a big eyesight coming out of the complex on lap 1, and so they've had to red flag it because he was out in the track and so was the bike. There's been just a few minutes delay, and now we're doing a full restart, which means because it's Thruxton, we're allowed a new tyre. So of course we've got a new Zero ready, because you've just got to have tyres ready for everything at the moment here. And so Rob's just putting a fresh tyre in, but it's a quick restart, so we're not changing it on the grid, we're changing it here in the garage, and then it'll just be me stood on the grid, accept the rider, and off we go. Steve's just topping the fuel back up. Right, it's busy. Restart, and he's crashed first lap just before church, so it's fast. He's lost the rear and it's flicked him off. It's not like a full ice on, he's hit the floor fairly hard, and then Olsen's run over the bike, so they've safety card and sent the med team out. So wait and see, but it's fast. I just got the bike back from scrutineering, and it's very second hand. Our apologies to Alex Olsen's team, because theirs is even worse than ours, because he hit ours and basically went over the top. Rider is reported as, well, he's conscious, can't remember a thing. Yeah, so he's hit his head fairly hard. His HJC's obviously doing a real good job of doing protecting him from the worst of the damage. But yeah, he's high on gas and air at the moment, so he's definitely not doing anything this afternoon and for a few days. Right, so quick assessment. Throttle, 800 quid. Handlebar tube and bits, irrelevant. Master cylinder looks like it's actually survived it. Frame has not, so it's punched a hole in it, worn a load off it, bent it up here a bit more as well. Radiator and oil cooler are completely destroyed there, several thousand quid's worth. It's ripped a load of the wiring out, the landers and stuff. It's done the exhaust as well. Swinging arm looks alright, subframe looks alright. Obviously a full set of bodywork, so that's another 1,000 quid plus the paint, so a couple of grand. Dash has survived, luckily. Ripped the steering damper off it completely. That's done a lot of damage, but welcome to Thruxton. If you have a crash here, it tends to be fairly fast. But everything's rebuildable. The rider will live to fight another day, so yeah, we're just going to strip a few bits off it here, get the forks over to Olin's to be checked, and basically do a few bits where we've got specialists at circuit to make the job a bit quicker for later.
Been a really difficult weekend, been busy. Donuts on tap in there. They're good.
So I didn't catch that last bit, Chris.
Donuts are good, Claire's fed as well with them. I'm happy with that. I've only had a couple. Yeah. Ice creams as well, Franco missed out on ice cream.
Yeah. I think that was careless of him to miss out on them, wasn't it?
Yeah, he didn't plan that very well at all. Wasn't thinking forward of what he could have got, so yeah, missed out on ice cream.
Right, and that is a wrap from Thruxton. And if I'm honest, a basically soul-destroying day. You know, the potential, the speed was there this weekend, his pace was good, but we've not had the results to back it up, and we're taking up a very broken motorbike. If you have ever considered sponsoring a motorbike racing team, now would be an excellent time to get in touch, because it's getting quite expensive. We need a little bit to keep us going, basically. But thank you for watching, and we will be back at Cadwell Park and hoping for some better luck. Bye for now.